All right, so today is a very special day for the channel. Ever since I first started the channel and kind of over the years in Booktube, one of my favorite things about, Booktube in general has been read-alongs. The amount of community that you can have talking about the books that you're all discovering together, that is a profound experience. And I've wanted to kind of do one of my own. Now that our community has been growing and it's at about 450 subscribers right now, which I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for joining this little community that we've been creating here over the last 4 or 5 months, I figured now is a good time as any to start figuring out what read-along we should do for 2025. Now, I didn't want to be the chooser of this because, as I always like to say, I'm the steward of the channel, but it's our channel. And so I figured what better way than to choose it all together. So I'm Nick Hill with Shelf-Esteem, and these are the few series that I'm contemplating for 2025 that I would love for you to help me choose so we can read them all together. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick Hill with Shelf-Esteem. I'm a composer, now also booktuber. You can find my music in The Wheel of Time Season 2, His Dark Materials Season 3, and the official Brent Weeks companion album for a series, Lightbringer, which came out last year. So I had about 4 series that I was really kind of contemplating putting on this list. They're all kind of longer form series, and 3 out of the 4 series I believe are complete or about to be complete. The fourth one might kind of require some special jerry-rigging to kind of do a read-along that would be very compelling in its own right, but also let us kind of anticipate books as they're coming out. So that's kind of what I was thinking. So kind of the format of this thing is I'm going to kind of talk about each one. What are the selling points? What are the potential pitfalls? Because some of these are more ambitious than others. And we can kind of figure out a reading schedule that feels like, there's some momentum behind it, but also that doesn't leave anybody in the lurch. And I'm going to be creating a special Discord channel this coming week after, and I'll let you know when that's up so that we can kind of start getting this all together. But the reason why I came up with this video couple months before the year ends actually is because I wanted to actually give a proper month for people to really think about what books that they would want to read next year and which read along that they think would be most compelling to join. And then it would give me a couple months after that to really kind of schedule guests and things, because I want to make this read along where every book we go over and we wrap up, whether it's be once a month, once every 6 weeks, whatever have you, we can have a special guest, whether it be the author, if we can get them, whether it be people who have read the series before or who are reading it and understand the deep dive lore that comes with it. Figured that could be kind of a fun way to, have everybody involved and kind of talk about these books as we go through them. So that was the reason for doing this video a little bit earlier. This one I recorded in, kind of mid to late September as of this taping. So that's kind of the thought behind that. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into the series and you let me know in the comments what you're thinking. I'm also going to be doing a community poll after this goes live, and that's going to be up for a month as well. So I'm going to tally all the votes in the comment section as well as the community poll so that you have multiple places where you can kind of talk about it and kind of what you want to see. Now, I would only request that if you're going to do one of the two, just do one of the two so we don't double count your votes, because I really want this to be as accurate as possible, as accurate as it can be, and be reflective of what you all really want to do. And my idea is by the end of October, I'll kind of announce which the winning series will be, and then we can kind of figure out. You'll have plenty of time to, get the books from the library, or you can purchase them if you want. And I'm leaving links in the description of articles about these books and also places where you could get them if you'd like. So without further ado, long ramble here, let's jump right into the books. So the first series I want to talk about is one that is slightly underrated in epic fantasy. Now, there are about 11 books out. I think the 11th book just came out in this series. And it is fast becoming known as one of the pillars of fantasy, which is really heartening to see an author who spent her life's work kind of writing a slow burn fantasy series with a large, complex world, beautiful prose, and unique character arcs. Seeing the series get its due. And that's in no small part to Booktube. And so, Booktube is kind of what turned me onto the series. I've been seeing videos of Philip Chase, Joanna from Joanna Reads talk about it as they make their way through the series. And I thought it could be really fun to do a read-along of The Wars of Light and Shadow by Jenny Wirtz. Now, Jenny Wirtz had also co-authored the Empire trilogy with Raymond E. Feist, and she is known for her standalone To Ride Hell's Chasm, as well as a host of other books. So, The Wars of Light and Shadow, what is it about? Now, I'll tell you this one thing. It was very difficult to find premises for some of these series without, like, ruining things and stuff. So I'm going to keep this as vague as possible, and I'm pulling from a couple different sources. And I'm going to leave those sources also in the description so you can kind of check them out for yourself if you want to do a deep dive. But just keep in mind, pitfalls are always spoilers, so just kind of keep that in mind as you're going through this. But everything I'm going to talk about is pretty much spoiler-free. So, what is The Wars of Light and Shadow about? It is a series of fantasy books by Jenny Wirtz, which takes place on the world of Ethera. The story explores the ambiguities of good and evil through the tale of two half-brothers, Arathon and Lysair, set in conflict. So, kind of vague premise there, but from what I've heard, and I'm also trying to learn about these books without, giving too much away to myself. But it is a slow burn fantasy. The prose is very lyrical and reminiscent of, say Robin Hobb's The Realm of the Elderling series. So if you like stuff like that, you might like something like this. It is complex and a rich world, kind of like Malazan Book of the Fallen. Except a key difference from what I've read is it doesn't drop you in the world and make you fend for yourself like, let's say, a Malazan does. It's a little bit more laid out, and the 11 books are divided into 5 different story arcs. The first arc is the first book, which is The Curse of the Mistwraith. And I'm going to kind of read a little synopsis about The Curse of the Mistwraith so you can kind of get a little bit more idea of what you're jumping into. It says, the world of Ethera lives in eternal fog, its skies obscured by the malevolent Mistwraith. Only the combined powers of two half-brothers can challenge the Mistwraith's stranglehold. Arathon, Master of Shadow, and Lysair, Lord of Light. Arathon and Lysair will find that they are inescapably bound inside a pattern of events dictated by their own deepest convictions. Yet there is more at stake than one battle with the Mistwraith, as the sorcerers of the Fellowship of Seven know well. For between them, the half-brothers hold the balance of the world, its harmony, and its future in their hands. With that, The Curse of the Mistwraith. So, this is a long-running series. I would anticipate this book project being, say, a year and a half, so as not to tire people out, but then at the same time have a momentum between each book, and so you don't forget everything at the same time. So that is the first series on deck here. I've wanted to read these series for a while anyways, and I figured what better way than to read them all together as a channel. So you let me know what you think about this one in the comments. If you like the idea, if you don't like the idea, which one you would choose of the 4 that I've kind of chosen here. Now the second one, speaking of Malazan Book of the Fallen, I had tried this a few years ago when I was not as experienced in fantasy. And I would say this one is not for the faint of heart because it does require having read a little bit more fantasy before diving into the deep end, that is Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's hard to kind of quantify again with this series because it is a long-form series. It's a 10-book series, and they're all pretty chunky books. They are very complex. They take place over thousands of years of the history of the Malazan the Malazan Empire. And it's interesting because it was written by Stephen Erickson and then also Ian Esselmont, they both came up with the idea for Malazan together through playing Dungeons and Dragons together, which is kind of interesting. The key point to know about this series is it doesn't really give you anything on a silver platter. It really does drop you in, and you do kind of have to fend for yourself. So each book is a little bit contained. So the first book has a set of characters. The second book will have a completely new set of characters and may take place in a completely different area of this world. And then the third book may go back to the first set of characters. So it is a little bit more kind of patchwork, I guess you could say. But I've read the first 2 books, and I'm going to be rereading them because it's been years, and even with my limited knowledge of fantasy at the time, I absolutely loved them. And I thought it was a very unique magic system. It was very unique prose in terms of the way it deals with these worlds. But there's many different species of characters. There's, tens of POVs. So it is very complex. It's military fantasy as well. So just keeping that in mind. But it really does talk about the blurred lines between good and evil and how there isn't necessarily a good and an evil. When you get down to kind of the foot soldier mentality, right? When you're there, you're preparing for battle as someone who's on the ground experiencing events. I thought that was a really interesting and compelling part about Malazan Book of the Fallen, but it also has a lot of philosophy in it. And Steven Erikson is a historian. I think he was like an anthropologist or archaeologist. And he brings kind of more of a historical slant to his fantasy. Like, if you were to look at this Malazan empire as kind of a historical retelling of like their account, their rise and fall, and what that was like, and the events and how they kind of permeate through this planet. So really, really interesting stuff. But again, it is probably the hard mode of fantasy in a lot of ways. I would say probably these two are. So these are two of the choices I have chosen. They're going to be longer form projects. So let's go to the third one, which is slightly different, and the fourth one, which is very different. So the third one, I'd been hearing about the indie publishing scene has become, gangbusters over the last few years. And that is of course true in fantasy as well. And I've been hearing about Ryan Cahill for the longest time over the last few years. I heard about it from Mike's book reviews, and now so many different Booktube channels have been reading it and reviewing his stunning series. And this is kind of like Dragon Rider fantasy, and it's a lot more fast paced from what I understand. And it's less of the slow burn elements. Even the larger books are a little bit more kind of fast paced. So if you like more fast paced books, this might be for you. But I'm going to kind of read a little premise here for you of what the series is as a whole. So it says, born in fire, tempered in blood, Etheria is a land divided by war and mistrust. The High Lords of the South squabble and fight, only kept in check by the Dragon Guard, traitors of a time long past, who served the Empire of the North. In the remote villages of southern Etheria, still reeling from the tragic loss of his brother, Kaelin Briar prepares for the Proving, a test of courage and skill that not all survive. But when three strangers arrive in the village of Milltown with a secret they are willing to die for, Kaelin's world is ripped from under him, and he is thrust headfirst into a war that has been raging for centuries. There is no prophecy. His coming was not foretold. He bleeds like any man, and bleed he will. I find that to be very compelling. It does feel like Chosen One tropes and stuff like that. But from what I understand, after the first book especially, it kind of starts to veer in its own direction and become its own thing. So really compelling stuff. Now, the only caveat with the series is it's not finished. Right now, there are 3 main novels and 3 novellas that are out. And it's kind of like the structure of it is like novella, novel, novella, novel, novella, novel. And I believe there's another novella coming out soon, and there's also a full book that is coming out. So I think it's a planned like 5 or 6 book series, if I understand correctly. And so right now there is 3 out. And so the idea could be we could read a novella in a couple weeks, and then we read the next book in a month, then another novella in a couple weeks, next book in a month, that kind of a thing. And then we can all wait for when the next book comes out, I think sometime next year or maybe late this year. And then we can all do a read along together, kind of make it a spectacle event. So that allows us to do that. And it's also a shorter series as well. So there's an advantage and also disadvantage. Depends on how you like your fantasy. So that is the third series I was thinking of choosing. And let's go to the fourth series because it's the most different. So a few years ago, I read an author I had not heard much about, and I fell in love. I read Boy's Life by Robert McCammon first. It's a coming-of-age story about what it's like to grow up in the 60s in Zephyr, Alabama, and kind of this murder mystery that's also involved in it. And I just thought that this guy is like, if you like Stephen King, which, a lot of this channel has been built upon, and Stephen King's my favorite author of all time. So anyone who's like Stephen King, I got to read it. You're going to love the way this guy does coming of age. Now, he also did another book called Swan Song, which is a post-apocalyptic kind of horror novel about the things people do to each other and how society would devolve in the event of a nuclear war. What a book. I mean, it's a masterpiece. I know, hot take, it's better than The Stand by Stephen King. So when I heard that Robert McCammon had done a long-running series, of which the last book should be coming out, I believe, this year, I wanted to jump at the chance to read this guy, because this guy is one of the best authors I've ever read. He's 2 for 2, and those 2 books would go on my top 10 of all time. So, what is this Matthew Corbett series about? This is a historical fantasy series that's set in the 1600s. And it stars Matthew Corbett, who's a private investigator. So I'm going to kind of read a little premise here. I found on an article that tries to talk about things spoiler-free as well. So it says, and I'm going to try to kind of read this a little rough just so you can, make sure that I'm keeping things as high level as possible and give you an idea of what the series is about. So it says Matthew Corbett is a private investigator, a professional investigator living in the tail end of the 17th century, a time when the forces of evil and good are at war in colonial America. The towns and countrysides of America are plagued with a range of tragedies that most residents believe to be a result of witchcraft. When we are first introduced to the lead in the series, he is a young assistant clerk to the itinerant judge Isaac Woodward. The first novel in the series, Speaks the Nightbird, is set in 1600 Carolinas, where the residents of Fount Royal are convinced that their city is cursed due to its many tragedies. Seeking a scapegoat, their wrath falls on Rachel Haworth, a beautiful widow that they demand be executed for practicing witchcraft. Isaac Woodward is the itinerant judge who they select to preside over the case. The young and astute clerk Matthew Corbett, who believes the young woman is innocent, assists him. So, very interesting kind of premise to this. This is very different to any of the fantasy series that I had on deck here. And it is a 10-book series, and it seems like each one is kind of, it does have a little bit of a story of the week kind of a feeling with an overarching character development of this Matthew Corbett. Now, Robert McCammon writes his characters like no one I've ever read. I mean, I would say Stephen King is the only one that I would feel like is kind of analogous to that style of writing. It's rich, but it's also very accessible, and it's very deep. He makes you understand and sympathize for characters you wouldn't otherwise sympathize for. So this is the 4th series I was thinking, very different to the rest. And I would love to know what you all think. I want to put it back to you. The balls are in your court. I want to know kind of, what you think would be a series that you'd want to read for 2025, because I want to do something that we all want to do together. I'm going to start this Discord channel, like I said, kind of get my ducks in a row so I can get, either maybe the authors or people who are really well versed in this to kind of help us along the journey. After we kind of decide this, October 31st, I think I'll kind of make the decision on which one, based on your votes, of course, which series we'll go for, and then we'll kind of start getting prepared for it. So again, you'll have plenty of time to get the books if you so choose in the format that you would like. So with that, let me know what you think in the comments or in that community poll, which I'm also linking down below, and along with all these articles as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to announce things, kind of give a little pitch on each one to you, and see what you think. So with that, I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this content. Want to join the read-along? We'd love to have you. The more the merrier. And I think this is just going to be a really fun thing for the channel and a way to talk about the books that, we love, or the ones that are yet to be discovered by us. So with that, please be good to yourselves. Please be good to each other. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video with lots more updates to come. Take care.